On 11Alive Plus, we're staying on top of breaking news here at 12:30. Within the last 90 minutes, the father of the accused Appalachee high school shooter was found guilty on all 27 counts, including second-degree murder. The jury decided 55-year-old Colin Gray should have known his son was a danger and is legally responsible for the tragedy at the high school. Our Grace King was in the courtroom as the verdict was read, has covered the case from the very beginning. Grace joining us now from Barrow County with reaction to the end of this first of its kind trial in Georgia, Grace.
Well, Cheryl, it was a quick verdict. Jurors reached that decision in less than an hour and a half. They were ready basically right after court began this morning to start filling out that form. All of them said unanimously, every single count given to them, guilty for Colin Gray, that he had sufficient warning that his son Colt Gray would carry out something like the Appalachee high school tragedy that, of course, claimed the lives of 4 people, injured 9, and just affected the lives of so many people. Colin didn't react much to that verdict being read in court today, but the families in the gallery just broke down crying. It's been a very emotional case for them. Of course, their lives were forever changed that day, and no verdict can ever bring them their loved ones back or their peace. However, they were glad to see some form of accountability. We also spoke with District Attorney Brad Smith. This is the first of its kind case in Georgia. Some people were saying, what kind of example would this set? Are these charges too broad? But the jurors said, you know what? We believe that these charges were meant for Colin Gray. We believe he's guilty on all of them. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We talk a lot about rights in our country. We're proud of our rights, and I'm proud of our rights. But, our rights were given to us by our forefathers. But God gave us a duty to protect our children. And I hope that we remember that as parents, as community members, to protect our children, because that is our God-given duty. I hope it starts the healing process. It can't, of course, complete it until we finish the whole trial, both trials. But I hope that they can start moving forward with their healing.
And there are a lot of questions about what kind of precedent this case could set, given that it's the first of its kind in Georgia. DA Smith said, look, this should not be something to see again and again and again. Parents need to recognize the warning signs, make sure their kids get the help they need. And as long as guns are secured or locked away, this wouldn't be a continuing issue. This isn't meant for any case. He says the actions Colin took in this case specifically led to those charges and, of course, that conviction here today. Colin Gray's sentencing will be at a later date. He faces up to 245 years in prison.
Grace, it was interesting to hear District Attorney Brad Smith also talk a little bit about how the verdict today could potentially impact what could be the next trial, depending on what happens next against Colt Gray, who was 14 at the time of the school shooting. He is the accused shooter. And they talked about this idea of there's a presumption of innocence because he hasn't gone to trial yet. But here you have his father convicted in a very decisive way. That juror not only saying guilty on all 27 counts, but as you mentioned, starting us off in such a quick verdict.
Well, it's definitely an interesting case in Michigan. The only other case we've seen that's kind of gone through the whole process, they had the school shooter's trial, or he took a plea. He pled guilty first, and then the parents went to trial, so they didn't have that kind of reverse that we have here, where the dad has been convicted of all these counts for a crime his son is accused of carrying out. Colt Gray still has not been convicted of those crimes. Now, whether he goes to trial or not, we'll have to see. They're working on a mental evaluation right now. But when they pick their jurors, the jurors in this case, they were saying, what did you hear about the shooting at Appalachee High School? What do you know? How does this influence your opinion? If Colt Gray decides to go to trial, they're going to ask those same questions. What do you know about the shooting? Do you know that the dad was convicted? They won't ask it like that, but they'll say, tell us what you know about that. And if they say, well, I know the dad was convicted of this, that could be an issue for jurors in Colt's case. But they're going to ask the jurors all those questions if it, again, goes to a jury trial. He could, of course, choose to have no jury because of the heightened emotions in this case. He could also choose to do a non-negotiated plea. He's on high-definition video. I mean, you can see the video. We watched it in court carrying out this crime. It's very hard to bring that up in court. So we'll see if he actually goes to trial. But that presumption of innocence, it's still there. And his defense attorneys will work very hard to make sure they have jurors, if it goes to a jury trial, that will not use the dad's case against Colt, because he does maintain that presumption of innocence.
Great insight, important context as this case continues to move forward. And as you said, these are important timelines for a community starting to heal, but nothing brings back the victim. victims. Grace King, thank you for your excellent reporting. The shooting killed Appalachee math teachers Christina Irami and Richard Aspinwald, who was also a coach. 2 students were killed, Christian Anglo and Mason Skirmerhorn, both just 14 years old. After the verdict, we reached out to their families to give them a chance to share any message if they'd like to. 9 others were injured in that 2024 shooting. Several of the students took the stand during the trial, recounting the horrors of that day and the trauma they still struggle with today. And as this historic verdict sinks in, legal experts say the speed of the jurors' decision says as much as the outcome itself. Earlier, we talked with former DeKalb County Assistant District Attorney and current defense attorney Robert James. He says the jury's quick turnaround, Grace mentioned just 90 minutes, signals something significant.
Well, that's fast, right? You don't normally see juries come back that fast in trials that last more than a day or a half day, just because of the sheer volume of evidence people have to review before they make a decision. So they apparently had their minds made up when they went back there.
James also predicts this case is far from over, saying appeals could move quickly and that Georgia Supreme Court may ultimately decide just how far this new standard of parental responsibility can go. And as always, the news never stops. That's why you can always stay connected with the 11Alive app. Just download the 11Alive app by scanning the QR code you see here on your screen. In just 2 hours, we're expecting to hear from Atlanta police after they announced an arrest today in a drive-by shooting that killed a 7-year-old girl. Take a look at the mugshot that just came in of that suspect. Police identify the shooter as Preston Smith, 19 years old. The arrest warrant outlines the charges, including murder and cruelty to children. Investigators say Smith is responsible for shooting at a Northwest Atlanta home 1 week ago today. They say his firing that weapon at the home took the life of 7-year-old Zoe Price on February 24th. Last night, Zoe's loved ones gathered at the Dunbar Recreation Center for a vigil to honor her life. Family members tell us Zoe was the youngest of 5 siblings, was a first-grade student at Slam Atlanta Charter School. She loved to cheer. She loved to play basketball. Her mother says she wants to keep Zoe's name alive.
I'm here to tell her story, and I hope she gets justice. That's all I care about. Justice for my daughter. That's it.
We have a crew at APD headquarters for a press conference that could begin at any moment. We'll stream it for you on 11Alive Plus when it starts. MARTA police are investigating after a person was shot at the Arts Center station in Midtown this morning. It temporarily disrupted rail service through the area. Ariana Manise has more from investigators.
MARTA police say they have 1 person in custody after a person was shot in the stomach early this morning at the Arts Center MARTA station. We're learning that this played out around 7 a.m. this morning here at the MARTA station along West Peachtree Street in Midtown. MARTA police say officers responded here at the Arts Center station just after 7:15 this morning after reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found 1 person who had been shot in the stomach. Police say the person was taken to a nearby hospital. While we were on the scene here, we did see officers take 1 person into custody, but at this time, it's not clear if that person is the same suspect MARTA police arrested in connection to the shooting. Now, service was disrupted this morning as police investigated, but MARTA says service has been returned to normal. Reporting from Midtown, I'm Ariana Manise for 11Alive.
Ariana, thank you. And MARTA continues its installation of the new Better Breeze system today. All fare gates at the Buckhead station are closed today for construction. Riders should use the emergency gates at the north and south entrances. One veterans organization is getting help combating mental health issues among servicemen and women. The Cobb County-based Warrior Alliance will get $750,000 to help them identify veterans who might be at risk of taking their own lives and then connecting them to life-saving resources. 11Alive's Joe Ripley has more on how the funding will make a big impact.
Jared Calloway joined the Army in 2003, inspired by a calling after September 11th and his grandfather, who was killed in combat in World War II.
We have a bond, we have a brotherhood and a connection when we're in the service.
After 15 years in the military, Calloway came home rudderless and unsure of what came next.
That's where the struggle was, is finding purpose and finding healing for all the stuff that I hadn't dealt with there were numerous times where I would sit in my car thinking about killing myself as well.
Scott Johnson is president and CEO of the Warrior Alliance, which connects more than 5,000 veterans a year to resources they need to successfully survive after service.
37% of veterans leaving the military are not connected to the VA. So there's a lack of awareness of the services that they could be getting.
The Warrior Alliance just received the Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Grant from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Military Outreach Manager Patrick Brown considers it a force multiplier in efforts to combat mental health issues.
It is going to change lives. It's giving us the opportunity to get out in those rural communities where there's underserved populations of people who might have served and gone 1 year or 50 years without having VA service-connected injuries or having access to VA benefits.
Jared Calloway has lost friends and family to war, but he's found new life after combat and peace in his mind.
You're not going to find purpose until you find yourself. So, and in order to find yourself, you got to love yourself. And in order to love yourself, you got to get help.
Joe Ripley, 11Alive News.
The Warrior Alliance will use the grant to target veterans who may not currently be connected to the VA or other support systems. The Georgia Department of Veterans Service is also receiving over $700,000 as part of this grant program.
A wedge set up over our area is bringing in cooler air and also some clouds, but that will break down. In fact, it will erode, and we'll watch those temperatures going up. I'll let you know how warm it's going to be in the full forecast straight ahead. Cooler than average, that's what we're going to expect for today. We got the wedge that's in place. When we talk about a wedge, folks, we're talking about air that comes with an area of high pressure that's up to the north of us, and it brings in an easterly flow. That easterly flow sometimes will push cooler air up against the mountains, and it kind of stays stagnant right there. And so we are seeing that for today, which is why we see these temperatures down into the 60s. Now the 70s is what we had just yesterday. That wedge won't make it as far south as LaGrange or Thomaston, so we're seeing temperatures in the 70s there today. But the rest of us looking at temperatures in the 60s and even some 50s up here to the far north and east, all right? And so that would be what's called the wedge. And that wedge, again, will be over us for today, but will erode. Starting tonight, going into tomorrow, and we're expecting that wedge to get away, and then once that happens, we'll see those temperatures really start to warm up. It is going to be rather warm around here over the next couple of days. Not a whole lot going on throughout the southeast. You can see the clouds building. The clouds have been pesky over us, and that's going to continue for today. Even for the next couple of days, they'll be in and out of the area. So not yielding any rainfall. That's good news. We don't have to worry about any rain, even with the clouds that are over us right now. We are looking at just a cloudy day. Stationary boundary boundary well down to the south of us. Again, that high pressure that's up to the north, allowing that easterly flow to come right on in here, which is why our temperatures are on the cooler side. Winds a bit breezy this afternoon, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Gusts could be a little bit higher than that at times. And again, this boundary not really impacting us at all. In fact, I'm expecting that to dissipate, and so we'll stay right there. High pressure will eventually slide in, and eventually to the east of us, we get back into that southerly flow, which will help to boost that temperature up over the next couple of days. We are headed toward the 80s, folks. They have been experiencing that already out toward the Dallas region. We have mild air over us today, and I'm calling it mild because our temperatures will be above the average for this time of year. We should be around 62. So it should be even cooler, but we'll be in the upper 60s for this afternoon. That mild air will start to retreat back to the north. So it gets out of here as the warm air begins to push in. Now, when I say warm air, what I mean by that is 80s coming our way. We'll experience that for the end of the work week and hold on to it right on through the weekend. Again, that high pressure that you can see right here, see that clockwise spin right there, bringing in that southerly flow. So it's bringing in that southerly flow to us as well. The moisture will start to increase on us as well, so it will start to feel a little bit more humid on the outside as well. So yeah, spring-like temperatures coming our way. In fact, temperatures will be climbing to the 80s, and we could tie or break records over the next couple of days. As we head into Thursday, we're expecting our temperature to get up to 80 degrees. The record is 81. We could tie that. Okay, and then as we head into Friday and Saturday, better chances to break those records. Our forecast high is 81. The record is 80. Same on Saturday. The record is 80. We're forecasting a high of about 82 degrees, and will remain right there as we head through the latter half of the weekend and into next week. Now, the record on Sunday is about 83 degrees, and I don't think we'll get that high on Sunday, but we'll see. We'll see. Now, something else to pay attention to as the temperatures start to warm up, our trees, flowers, the grass will all start to bud a little bit because temperatures in the 80s, they're thinking, okay, yeah, springtime is coming. And so they'll start to bud, and that's going to drive those pollen numbers up. We saw those pollen numbers yesterday get up to 166. That was on the high side as far as the tree pollen goes, but the low end of the high side. We're talking about extreme numbers around here normally where we get in the 1,000 count. So we're exceeding even extremely high temperature, high pollen counts. And so that 80-degree stretch of weather will likely start to cause those to bud a little bit there, even more, putting out the pollen, and so expecting those numbers to go up. So now would be the time to go ahead and take those antihistamines so you can build up some immunity to some of the pollen, because we know once we get to the third week in March and the last week in March, that's when those numbers really start to get a little bit higher. So now is the time to really do that. Forecast track model, here it is, and the time above my head. You can see by 4 o'clock this afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock, we start to see those clouds begin to clear out, partly sunny skies. You're looking at that easterly flow continuing for tonight, but then by tomorrow, that will begin to shift a little bit. We'll start you off with a few clouds overhead on Wednesday morning, but by the time we get to Wednesday afternoon, partly sunny skies will be the call, and the temperatures will respond to that eroding wedge that we have over us. With that southerly flow, we'll see those temperatures heating up into the upper 70s. We'll do it again as we head into Thursday. Start you off with a few clouds in the morning. By the afternoon, we begin to clear it out. Our highs on Thursday will hit that 80-degree mark. We're at 78 degrees on Wednesday, 80 on Thursday. How about 81 on Friday, where we could break the current record? 20% chance for an isolated shower. Most of us stay dry. 30% chance as we get into Saturday and Sunday with those temperatures in the 80s, and that continues as we head into next week.
Happening right now, Governor Brian Kemp signing the amended 2026 state budget, giving some remarks ahead of time. That budget including funding for income tax and property tax relief, an endowment for the Georgia Dreams Scholarship Program, and transportation investments. We'll have much more on the signing coming up at 4 o'clock on 11Alive News. Atlanta has been named to the short list of cities to host the 2028 Democratic National Convention. Boston, Chicago, Denver, and Philadelphia are also on the list. All 5 cities will receive site visits this spring. President Trump and top members of his administration now making the case for the decision to strike Iran. But opposition is building on Capitol Hill as more classified briefings are expected today. NBC senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
As the war in Iran escalates, President Trump says the U.S. is ahead of schedule.
We projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
The administration said over the weekend that Iran was threatening U.S. forces. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio explaining it this way.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces.
Saying the U.S. had to move fast to avoid higher casualties.
The imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. We went proactively in a defensive way.
Democrats aren't buying it.
But if we equate a threat to Israel as the equivalent of an imminent threat to the United States, then we are in uncharted territory.
Overnight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking on Fox News.
You're not going to have an endless war. This terror regime in Iran is the weakest point that it's been here.
Echoing Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who earlier insisted the war wouldn't be forever.
This is not Iraq. This is not endless.
But there has been mixed messaging.
The objective was not regime change. The objective was to take out those missiles.
On Saturday, the president said this to the Iranian people, suggesting regime change.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take.
Now he's stressing 4 objectives for the U.S. mission: destroying Iran's missile capabilities, annihilating their navy, preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, and ensuring they can no longer fund proxy terror groups outside the country.
This was our last best chance to strike.
The House Oversight Committee has released hours of new video showing former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testifying under oath. This is part of its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The closed-door depositions took place last week. Committee Chairman James Comer called it a culmination of a lengthy effort to question the former first couple about their knowledge of Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Both Clintons have repeatedly denied knowing about any criminal activity. A Georgia police captain is back on the job after a long recovery battle. 11Alive's Caitlin Ross posted this video sharing Captain Brantley Worley's story.
He's back at work, and the bad guy didn't win. Last September, Captain Brantley Worley, he's both a police officer and firefighter in McKaysville, Georgia, was shot in the back of the head while responding to a call. His wife, Jessica, didn't get to see him for nearly 3 hours. He was in a trauma bay, fighting for his life. Now, this week, he put his uniform back on and walked out the door to go to work. He was so excited about it. He's still seeing specialists, recovering from a traumatic brain injury. The trial in his case doesn't even start until this fall. But he kept telling his family one thing through it all: evil wouldn't win. And it didn't. The deputies and medics who ran in and got him to safety were awarded medals of bravery. Brantley himself received the Medal of Valor and the Purple Heart for what he endured and how he responded that night. But what really gets me is this. He says being a police officer and firefighter isn't just what he does, it's who he is. He's a dad of 5. His amazing wife, Jessica, is a U.S. veteran who's basically been his nurse since the shooting. And they're that family that shows up for everyone else. They leaned on their community through this hard season of their lives. And this week, he is back to policing, back to firefighting, back to doing what he loves next to the woman he loves. The bad guy didn't win.
You can watch more stories like this whenever it works for you. Just download the 11Alive app. We'll be right back.